had no idea what drill rapping was, but I called my son and he sent me some videos, and it is alarming.
The violence is infused in the music.
They feel like the rap is making the street more dangerous.
Drill rap has turned into quite a mess with all the violence and murders going on. It's like a toss-up between hip-hop rap and drill rap, trying to figure out which one's worse. It's not just Chiraq anymore. It's all over the world. What's even more messed up is that many of these UK drill rappers are out there, getting their hands dirty, stabbing people on camera, and they're not even trying to hide it. Seriously, these guys have taken things to a whole new level, and it's wild. Tariq Montero. Back on August 12, 2019, Alex Smith, who was only 16 years old, took his last breath alone and slumped on a doorstep. But before all this darkness, he was just like any other kid, with dreams and aspirations. He was a huge Arsenal fan, dreaming of becoming a professional footballer. He grew up in Islington, but moved to Wembley not long before his tragic end. There was some buzz that Alex played for Southampton Youth FC, but that turned out to be a mix-up. The club clarified that he might have attended trials at the London Development Centre, but he didn't make it onto their roster. It's believed that after this setback, things took a downturn for Alex. That day on August 12th wasn't the first time Alex Smith would be stabbed in relation to gang violence. In May 2018, he got stabbed on Ambler Road near Finsbury Park. A year later, he was stabbed again on Byworth Walk. To keep him away from the gang scene, his family made a move to Wembley. Little did they know this move would somehow connect him with the Combo Gang. In January 2019, Needham Bilgin was fatally stabbed while riding his bike on Caledonian Road. He might have been associated with the Cowley Boys gang, but no one was ever charged with his murder. Word on the street was that Alex Smith had a hand in it, but there's no hard evidence, just rumors. Despite these rumors, Alex continued to be an active member of his gang, the Combo Gang. Some say that a few nights before his own murder, he fired shots at Tariq Montero and Syed Muhammad, who were both members of the active gang. Now fast forward to that night when it all went down. Alex and his buddies were grabbing a bite at Nando's on Bolsover Street. They wrapped up dinner around 11:30 p.m. and walked out through the Bolsover Street exit. That's when things took a dark turn. As they stepped outside, they ran into the active gang, and things got real scary quickly. These active gang folks were out for payback, probably because of some recent shootouts and an attack on one of their own from the Combo Gang. There were 6 of them, cruising around in 2 stolen cars, a Fiesta and a Seat Leon. They spotted Alex and his crew, and the chase was on. Alex and his crew tried to run and escape, but they couldn't shake off their pursuers. They chased them down without mercy. In a panic, Alex started banging on doors, practically pleading for his life, but nobody came to help, and he ended up getting stabbed brutally, left to bleed out on someone's doorstep. The culprits made a quick escape in their stolen rides. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but it was too late. Alex Smith was pronounced dead shortly after 11:30 p.m. The police immediately launched an investigation, starting with CCTV footage, and quickly located the burnt-out stolen cars in different parts of Kilburn, London. And despite media reports suggesting otherwise, a court document revealed that the police identified all 6 members of the active gang involved in the crime. Arif Biomi was identified as the driver of the Seat Leon, with Yassine Abdi riding shotgun and Abdirahman Ibrahim in the back. In the Fiesta, Syed Salaban was at the wheel, with Tariq Montero aka Suspect, and Syed Muhammad aka Swavy as passenger. Tariq is a British drill rapper who back in 2020 dropped Turn Up with T-Scam and featured in Fredo's Double Tap, released on Independence Day, reaching number 73 on the UK singles chart. And then in 2022, he teamed up with Nino Uptown for Frostbite and dropped his first mixtape, Suspicious Activity, in February of the same year. He and Swavy had gained notoriety in the UK drill music industry, rapping about crimes and murders they were allegedly involved in. He was also part of the UK drill collective active gang crew, whose members after the stabbing incident made plans to leave the country. One of them, Abdirahman Ibrahim, was arrested in Southampton after his attempt to leave the country failed due to a damaged passport. He underwent psychiatric treatment for drug-induced psychosis while in custody. Arif was apprehended on August 18, 2019 at an address in Wembley, while another member, Yusuf, was arrested the next day. Arif was charged with murder, while the other man faced charges related to assisting an offender, among others. Both were remanded in custody, awaiting trial at the Inner London Crown Court in early 2020. Meanwhile, the police continued their hunt for the remaining 4 suspects, believed to have fled to parts of Africa. In court, they talked about what happened that night when the 2 stolen cars, the Fiesta and the Seat, rolled out of Conway Mews together. Montero and Muhammad hopped out of the Fiesta, while Biomi took the wheel of the Seat. Abdi decided to hoof it, and that's when the whole crazy chase got going. Tariq was armed with a knife the size of a small sword. And as Alex ran, banging on doors for help, the three gang members caught up with him. Abdi and Muhammad grabbed hold of Alex while Tarek stabbed him not once, but twice. The second time, he stuck that blade in so hard it popped out of poor Alex's back. CCTV footage showed that Biomi never left the car during the attack, but the prosecution argued that he was just as responsible for Alex's death due to joint responsibility and was also an accomplice when the scene was posted online. But you might be wondering what happened to Tarek when the authorities were arresting the whole crew. Where did he go? It wasn't until early 2022 that the police located him and Swavey in Nairobi, Kenya around January 26, 2022. Funny thing is, once they landed in Kenya, he went ahead, tied the knot, and even became a dad. Upon their return to the UK in January 2022, both Tarek and Swavey appeared in magistrate and crown courts. They were remanded in prison, awaiting their trial, which was set to begin in March. After a 5-week trial that ended in May, they got hit hard by the verdict. The Old Bailey jury didn't mess around and unanimously found them guilty of murder. The rapper got slapped with a life sentence, and he's looking at a minimum of 24 years behind bars. Swavey didn't get off any lighter. He's got a life sentence too, with a minimum of 23 years. Funny thing is, they were both absent for their sentencing with Judge Sarah Monroe. Nyron Jean-Baptiste. The story of Nyron Jean-Baptiste takes us to Southeast London in Bellingham, where it all happened. The thing is, gang-related stuff is always full of rivalries, but the young boy who got murdered wasn't even directly involved. He was just another innocent kid chatting with someone at the time. Back in November 2018, there was an incident outside Morley's Chicken Shop in Southeast London. Nyron, who was just a kid at the time, got himself into serious trouble and was found guilty of murdering Jay Hughes. The whole thing went down right at the junction of Broadhouse Road and Randall's Down Road. That day, a Ford Galaxy pulled up, and 3 guys armed to the teeth with machetes and knives jumped out, targeting Jay and his friend. Jay's buddy managed to escape, but Jay wasn't so lucky. CCTV footage captured the whole terrifying scene. Nyron, without any reason, stabbed Jay while he was just standing outside the shop minding his own business. One witness said they heard Nyron saying, "I got one," and that it was completely unprovoked. After the attack, they made a quick getaway in their car, leaving Jay injured, but he somehow managed to stumble into the chicken shop, where people tried their best to help him. The paramedics showed up around 5:20 p.m., doing everything they could to save him. They rushed him to King's College Hospital, but those stab wounds went right to his heart. After 3 hours of trying, they couldn't bring him back, and he was declared dead. The stab wounds were just too severe. Nyron faced the consequences of his actions. He was given a life sentence, meaning he would be behind bars for at least 19 years. Plus, he got an extra 4 months for carrying a weapon. It was a sad and senseless story that shook the neighborhood. Forensics dug into Jay's blood at the back of that Ford Galaxy, connecting the dots with solid proof. They also had more evidence pointing fingers at the defendant. They tracked their phone records and showed they were in the same spot as the car at the same time. So the cops dropped by the defendant's place in Penns on November 23rd. Nyron tried to bolt, but they caught him in Gravesend, Kent. Guess what they found? A huge hunting knife tucked into his waistband, and they hit him with another charge for that. Even behind bars, he stirred up trouble, racking up around 10 incidents. It doesn't spell out the details, whether it was with guards or other inmates, but it paints a picture of a guy who just didn't give a damn. He was willing to jump out and take a life, just like the witness said, to make a statement. The prosecution pointed out he was part of a crew called M20, linked to Penn's Lewisham and the rappers Russ and Taze. Nyron even appeared in their Westwood video. He had violent lyrics of his own, and he was in the same crew with serious issues against B-Side from Bellingham, where Jai sadly met his end. In the rough streets of the city, where secrets whispered at. Street corners and dark alleys held untold tales. Nyron was a living legend in a world where violence was the currency and power came to those willing to do anything for it. The lyrics of the streets, filled with talk of skanks and zombie shanks, gave you a glimpse into his world. A world where disputes got settled with knives and the line between survival and destruction blurred. Nyron was the poster child for what's called the jump out gang. You know, no questions asked. If you see your rivals, you attack, no matter if people are watching. It's a world where the rule book is simple. Strike first and strike hard. He lived and breathed that code, the ruthless heartbeat of his neighborhood. And then came the day when Nyron had to face the music in court. Judge Anuja Daher didn't pull any punches. She called Nyron's stabbing of Jai Hughes bold, swift, and heartless. In that courtroom, the truth hung heavy. Nyron had walked up to Jai, a young man with no ties to him, and ended his life without a trace of remorse. The young man was just an innocent bystander, caught in the crossfire of a feud he had nothing to do with. Nyron, sitting there in his gray prison tracksuit, braided hair, and flanked by security officers, didn't show a hint of emotion. It's like he had a wall around him. On the other side of the courtroom, Jai's family watched with pain and disbelief. Jai's mother, in a sorrowful voice, made it clear that Nyron's actions had torn their lives apart, and that time couldn't heal the hole he'd left behind. When she spoke directly to Nyron, her words were heavy with grief and anger. She said, "You need to realize that you have changed our lives forever, and that we are the ones left serving a life sentence, and that he was too young, it wasn't his time to go. I don't believe I can ever fully accept it. She wanted him to understand the magnitude of his actions, to realize that he had sentenced her family to a lifetime of suffering. In that courtroom, one truth couldn't be denied. Nairon's actions had left a community broken and scarred. It was a story of violence, rivalry, and loss that sent chills down your spine. What made this tragedy all the more chilling was Nairon's history of violence. He had already been convicted 4 times for knife crimes before he claimed Chai's life. Within the confines of custody, he had been involved in 13 violent incidents, which was a testament to his unrelenting aggression. It was as if he was a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. But Nairon's story isn't just about his actions, it's also about where he came from. His upbringing added another layer to this tragedy. Imagine growing up without the love and care of your parents, left to fend for yourself in an unforgiving world. Nairon's bleak childhood, painted by his lawyer Graham Trembath as a tale of neglect, showed just how deep his scars ran. Osita Alagboso. This wasn't just another tragedy, it was friendship gone sour. Osita Alagboso and his buddy Joseph Matimba got into trouble for a mess that started as part of a larger gang feud, going down between 2 crews. Things turned seriously dark. They were caught up in this huge gang feud between K-Block and NPB, which is short for No Plan B, and it got way out of hand. Osita, 18 at the time, was found guilty in April of 2021 of stabbing 19-year-old Jaden McFarland in Brookfield Road, Ashford, Kent, in March 2020. Osita, in a heartfelt letter, admitted he messed up big time. In his words to Jaden's family, he said, "I messed up, I know it. I can't even begin to say how sorry I am. I never wanted any of this." He is currently serving a life sentence with a minimum of 20 years over what the judge called super creepy and messed up killing and another stabbing. The judge, however, didn't buy Osita's remorse act, calling him out for being a danger to society. He told Osita straight up that he knew exactly what he did was wrong and that violence wasn't cool. He was warned he might never see the light of day again if he didn't change his ways. And honestly, considering Osita's past violence, that warning was well deserved. The whole nightmare started when Osita from Ashford started his own gang, NPB. Jaden, caught in the middle, used fake cash to buy drugs from the duo, and that set off a chain of events that led to the tragedy. The gangs involved, YTB and NPB, got uglier and uglier, posting horrifying stuff about violence and eventually taking their fight from the internet to the streets. It was chaos. What's even worse is that Jaden didn't even have a chance. He wasn't armed, and he fell victim to this senseless violence. And to make matters more messed up, Matimba seemed pretty pleased he got away with it. He was deep into the gang life, with knives and drugs all mixed up in it. During the trial, it became chillingly clear just how deep this feud ran. Matimba, Osita's partner in crime, didn't just stop at being involved. He took sick joy in Jaden's death, even celebrating it in a rap song. The court saw through his act of remorse and redemption. Even after being out on bail, he couldn't resist boasting about the incident on social media, as if it was some twisted badge of honor. Then there was Hassan Tejan, a guy who wasn't even part of any gang but got caught up in the mess as their driver. He ended up admitting to the same offense and got a 12-month sentence. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But still, the trial painted a pretty horrifying picture. It all started a year before, escalating into a brutal confrontation, and the jury got an eyeful of evidence videos and audio recordings of these gang clashes, and then the gruesome details of that fateful day. Osita, armed with not 1 but 2 knives, including a crazy Rambo-style blade, confronted McFarland in broad daylight at noon. Things escalated fast, and Jaden, who used to be his friend, got stabbed twice. One of the knives even broke during the attack, but that didn't stop Osita. McFarland, in a desperate bid for survival, managed to escape momentarily, but the killer relentlessly pursued him, still wielding that terrifying knife. Prosecutors said he chased Jaden into a small residential car park, still waving that terrifying blade, but he had to hide it temporarily when someone in a car spotted him. However, Jaden couldn't make it, and sadly, an hour later, he succumbed to his knife wounds. One of those wounds was a massive 17 centimeters gash that pierced his lung and chest cavity. It was brutal. The prosecution didn't hold back at Osita's sentencing hearing. They painted the pair as hardcore gang members, deep into carrying knives and dealing drugs. They said they both even took pleasure in Jaden's murder and showed his sick approval through rap songs about the whole thing, even writing online about 2 guys getting gut down, which was clearly about McFarland and another person's death, a secret one. Court records spilled the beans on some Snapchat messages where Osita was waving weapons around and threatening to slice up anyone from the rival gang, K-Block. Witness statements, seen inside Maidstone Crown Court, had Matimba bragging about not snitching and celebrating being cleared of murder. But Matimba, who's well educated and from London, got convicted of perverting the course of justice. Why? Because he and the driver, Tejan, helped. McFarland's killer changed clothes inside a takeaway restaurant in Ashford, in the disabled toilets. They gave him 18 months behind bars, but because he already spent 450 days in remand, the judge said that was enough time served. Crazy, right? And after that, he started making music under the name J-Caps, even filming music videos in Leicester, but it doesn't end there. Osaida and his crew took it to a whole new level of messed up. They were caught on tape, laughing about Jaden's death, and even had the guts to share pictures of his lifeless body on social media. It's beyond messed up. It's downright horrifying. In the end, Osaida got hit with a life sentence. With at least 20 years behind bars, the judge laid it out for him. He won't see the light of day until he proves he's changed his ways and isn't a threat anymore. And honestly, given the madness of it all, that's the least they deserve. It just goes to show, you never know where things might end up when it comes to violence and gangs. Jaden O'Neal Cricklow. Rapper SJ, whose real name is Jaden O'Neal Cricklow, was born on April 24, 2002 in North London, particularly in the rough area known as Tottenham. As a kid, he had the same love for football as many folks did, but what set him apart was his incredible talent on the field. He didn't just play football, he excelled at it. In fact, he reached the level where he was performing in stadiums, playing at the highest level of the sport. You know, it's not every day you find someone who's really good at not just one, but two things in life. Well, SJ was one of those lucky folks. He had this incredible football talent, and it seemed like he could have gone pro and made a name for himself. But you know how life is. It doesn't always follow the plan we have in our heads. See, SJ had big dreams. He didn't want to be stuck in the tough neighborhood he grew up in with all its street troubles. Nah, he wanted to leave that street life behind and make his life mean something. So what did he do? He poured his heart into football. He was all in, thinking it might be his ticket out, but life threw him a curveball. Maybe it was injuries, maybe it was something else, or maybe it was the streets calling. But his football dream didn't pan out the way he hoped, so he found another passion: music. That's when he joined up with some others and became a part of the music group we now know as OFB. OFB, short for Original Farm Boys, made quite an entrance onto the music scene, particularly in 2018. Their debut track, Bad B on the Niz, created a buzz that was hard to ignore. Their style was unique, their flow was distinct, and they brought something fresh to the drill music genre. They stood out in a crowd of drill groups, marking the beginning of their rise to fame. One of their early tracks, Reality Purge Ambush, truly struck a chord with listeners. It gained immense popularity, reaching millions of views, a remarkable achievement. However, they faced their fair share of challenges. The police began to remove their music videos due to the explicit content, language, and themes they addressed. It was a common issue for many rappers, but OFB's music often touched on real-life experiences that authorities couldn't ignore. Plus, they still managed to make waves by re-uploading their videos. But on May 16, 2019, SJ's life took a dramatic turn. He was arrested and charged in connection with the murder of a 20-year-old man, Kamali Gabadan Link, who folks said was part of a rival gang. The WGMs, SJ and his friends used machetes and a samurai sword in that brutal crime alongside 4 other gang members in Wood Green, North London, back in February of 2019. The victim, a father of 1, met his end as he was cornered outside a cinema, chased by assailants on bicycles, and killed in a hair salon right in front of witnesses. He was stabbed 5 times and died from a busted artery, all because of a long-standing gang rivalry. On the night of the murder, these 5 gang members, plus 2 others we don't know, hopped on their bicycles and headed toward Wood Green around 7 p.m. Their mission: to go after rival gang members. They were loaded with weapons, at least 5 knives, including a machete, a sword, a handgun, and even a shotgun. As they neared a VU cinema complex on Lordship Lane, their eyes landed on Kamali and his friend. Instantly, the knives and guns were out in the open. They chased his friend Jason Fraser, aka Swift, who was about 20 at the time, cornered and started stabbing him over 8 times and even shot him in the butt. It was crazy. But Kamali, who managed to get back to his parked car, tried to scare SJ and the gang by driving at them, but it didn't work out so well. Now they didn't care about the friend anymore. They turned their rage on Kamali and started bashing his car windows with their weapons. Kamali tried to make a run for it by reversing his car, but he got stuck when he bumped into some other parked cars. He had no choice but to ditch his ride and sprint into a hair salon across the street, hoping for some safety there. But the crew weren't letting go. They followed Kamali into that hair salon, and sadly, Kamali got stabbed real bad. He ended up in the hospital but didn't make it. SJ was remanded straight to jail, which is a strong indicator that they had substantial evidence against him or were concerned he might not show up for court. His trial was bound to be lengthy due to the severity of the murder charge. Some people get bail, but for such a serious charge, it's rare. Amid all this, in 2019, SJ dropped a track called Youngest in Charge, his first proper solo single. It was a catchy tune that quickly racked up millions of views, but while it showcased his talent and diverse style, it didn't exactly help his case in court. Here he was, just arrested for murder, and now he had a song talking about stabbings and such. It probably didn't paint the best picture picture for his trial. In that song, he talked about what happened on the day of the murder, admitting that he thought it was just a day out. He was just 17 when he was sentenced to spend a minimum of 21 years in prison. He was eventually offered a £150,000 recording contract behind bars, and that was quite a shocker, but it doesn't end there. His involvement with the OFB Collective had also brought them into the spotlight. They still released videos with lyrics glorifying violence and even posted clips featuring gunshots. However, their trial, SJ, was pretty far from smooth and was marked by violence within the courtroom. Fights broke out as they were led out of court, with the prosecutor, a former athlete, having to assist police officers in restraining one of them, who leaped from the public gallery. But it was on that day SJ's fate was sealed in court. The jury and the judge determined that his involvement in the murder warranted a minimum sentence of 21 years behind bars. It's heartbreaking to see such a talented artist with so much potential end up like this. Sometimes the company folks keep or being in the wrong place at the wrong time can change everything, and that's just a sad situation all around. Junior Nyanlembe. Now, this story is quite saddening because the victim here was much younger than the others, and so we're his killers. Let's go back to the summer of 2018, a time when a tragic incident cast a shadow over a 16th birthday celebration at the Romford Community Centre in London. The story starts with Jordan Doherty, a 15-year-old drill rapper who went by the name Young Valenti. Little did anyone know that this would be his final chapter. It all began when the party invitations started circulating like wildfire on Snapchat. What was meant to be a modest celebration soon spiraled into chaos as more and more people showed up. The situation escalated till there were too many people trying to be in attendance at the party. It was like an invite explosion, and suddenly everybody and their grandma showed up. Gate crashers got the boot, but the tension refused to die down. It was still thick enough to cut with a butter knife. As the night wore on, tensions flared, and a big fight started between two rival crews. And that's when things went from wild to scary. Little did anyone know that this clash would set the stage for an unfolding tragedy. In a desperate bid to escape the escalating chaos, Jordan took off running. A gang of kids chased him down and tackled him to the ground. Shockingly, 18-year-old Junior Nyanlembe, who was only 16 at the time, stabbed Valenti not once but twice right in the chest. Despite the nasty wounds he suffered, he managed to get up on his feet with all the pain and desperation visible on his face and made another attempt to run. But then sadly, he didn't get too far. He stumbled again and fell not too far from the scene of the first encounter. What made this horrific incident even more disturbing was the fact that every brutal detail was recorded on a mobile phone and still shared on Snapchat. Junior, like anyone who robs another of their life, couldn't escape the consequences of his heinous actions. The long arm of justice reached out, and he got hit with a minimum of a 15-year prison sentence for murder. But in this tragedy, he wasn't the only one in the hot seat. Nicholas J-Lo, at 18, also faced the reckoning, receiving a 4-year sentence, a stark reminder that his involvement in this gruesome crime had dire consequences. A 16-year-old, whose identity remains veiled, was met with a 3-year sentence, charged similarly with 1 count of grievous bodily harm. Yet the list of those held responsible didn't end there. 2 others, Jeremiah Idawu and Kevin Sowemimo, both 18, initially attempted to deny their involvement in the violent crime. They denied any participation in the brutal crime, but the truth eventually caught up with them. They participated in the attack by kicking and stomping on Jordan both before and after the stabbing. Jeremiah Idawu, who was finally sentenced for 3 years at the Old Bailey, was told that he would be spending his time at a young offenders institution for his involvement in conspiring to commit grievous bodily harm. Even though his role in the violent episode was considered less severe, it couldn't erase the fact that he had cruelly stomped on the defenseless 15-year-old as the young boy lay on the ground. It initially seemed like the sentence took forever, but because of the coevid, it did take long. It's worth mentioning that Idawu, who was a part of this evil, was pointed out by his defense attorney, Andrew Morris, to have dreams of becoming a footballer and had been diligently trying to stay out of trouble, even abiding by his curfew. Judge Tom Kark recognized his rehabilitation efforts, but emphasized that as he was 18 at the time of conviction, he would serve an adult sentence. However, he also remarked that if Idawu had been older during the attack, he would have faced a more severe sentence, 6 years of incarceration. In the judge's own words, "I find in your case this can be regarded as an offense of lesser harm. I don't mean for 1 second that Jordan didn't suffer great harm. I'm acutely conscious that this young man died in circumstances which caused grief to his family and friends." Jordan Doherty, aka Young Valenti's life was cruelly cut short in an utterly senseless act of violence. He never got the chance to make a name for himself in drill rap or even say goodbye to loved ones. It's honestly heartbreaking to see how gang violence is affecting our young people. Drill rap sometimes seems to make it worse, but the question of canceling drill and ending these artists' dreams is a complex one. The debate is a tough one, but it's definitely a conversation that needs to keep going to find the right balance. Click on the cards on your screen to discover more stories like this one.